Thank you so much, Tom. And it's an honor to present. Tom and Dr. Boone were among my first contacts when I moved to Ohio, which is almost 2 years ago at this point. So it's been very cool to see everyone kind of end up working together and be able to join and be part of this network. Um, I appreciate the opportunity to present today, and I'm going to tell you a bit about my experiences as not only an educator myself, but also throughout my consulting work, which has been to help schools and districts use measurement in the area of family engagement, particularly because we know it doesn't always get measured. Tom, you can go to the next slide. So just a few things about me. I love using data to tell stories and highlight trends and, uncover new pieces of information. And let me be very clear, I am not a statistician and I don't expect anyone I work with to be. A lot of this can be done in very simple ways, but strategic ways at the same time. We'll be talking about some of that. I moved to Columbus from Baltimore, Maryland, where I spent most of my career in practice as a teacher, as a community resource coordinator, or at least that I think is the title they use in Ohio. It's a little different there. I worked for Baltimore City Public Schools as a district family engagement specialist and then as their evaluator. As I mentioned, I have my own consulting company. I've had it since 2015. I also teach on the side at Stevenson University in Maryland in their community-based education and leadership program. And most recently, actually just joined OSU doing some part-time research with this College of Social Work on vulnerable youth and families. So I do a lot of different things, but they're all around the same topic. Yeah, so we can go through this kind of quickly, Tom, if you want to just show the whole slide, because Dr. Boone and Dr. Wellman kind of touched on this. Someone shared this exact quote with me a number of years ago, and I think I've used it in about 90% of the presentations I've given since, because it just, I think, conveys the point brilliantly. Not only what gets measured gets done, and I think that's true, but there is like deeper meaning to that too. We can't learn from our successes and failures if we don't know what they are. And at the last one here, if you can demonstrate results, you get to keep doing what you're doing. And so I know Dr. Boone mentioned compliance, and we'll definitely talk about that. But this is kind of the flip side of the compliance piece, right? Like if you can really show all that you're doing, then you get opportunities to continue and grow that work. So I've always loved this particular quote as a way to just really highlight why it's more than just something we have to do, but those pressures are still very real. Go ahead. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the measurement challenges that I've personally faced. Now, full disclaimer, you probably know by now, I really love data. So my challenges may be different from some people's challenges who really despise data or are afraid of data. And those are very valid feelings. But here are some of the things that I've experienced. Sometimes I felt like I was the only one who cared about data. Like no one else really wanted to give it any time. Certainly, as we talked about, the pressure that comes from compliance around needing to do better. Sometimes it was difficult when my colleagues may have had an interest in trying to improve, but didn't have any training or background in understanding and using data. And so we had to kind of start from square one, and I had to do trainings with colleagues, or sometimes there wasn't time to do that. Speaking of which, there's always people in your organizations, and sometimes it's ourselves, who just are so overwhelmed with other work that data does not become a priority. And then kind of just a lack of structure around using data in an organization. No uniform tools for collecting data, no systems in place for how we discuss it in meetings. Those types of things have been really challenging in trying to incorporate data into our regular work. So I would love for you to take a couple seconds, if you can go back for 1 second, Tom. I would love for you to just in the chat box share what are some challenges you have faced around measurement. I'd love to just hear from everyone. Unwillingness to change things that are not working. Yes, definitely felt that one acutely. And I mean, it could be as simple as I don't know where to start. That is totally valid too. Limited responses, surveys maybe not being sufficient to measure what we really need to know. Anyone else have something, a challenge that they want to share? Yeah, change takes time for sure. Not asking the right questions, data quality issues. Yeah, um, these are all really important issues because if you're the one kind of advocating for data, um, any one of these challenges just gives people fuel for, oh, hey, well, I guess we shouldn't do that because that's going to take too long, or we don't have the right information, we can't do that, and so I think these are all things we can work through and that we'll talk about a little bit. Listening to what the data tells us, getting more data, deeper data. Yeah, these are all great points. Thank you. Okay, Tom. So I really believe that creating a culture of data can help address some of these issues, a lot of these issues actually, because we can turn compliance and requirements into something meaningful and tied into the real work that we're doing. Um, we can strengthen our teams by having everyone on the same page or a lot closer to the same page around the use of data. And we can build up ourselves and our colleagues and our stakeholders, sharing data with parents, sharing data with students. Again, not a statistician, don't need to be a statistician. These are things that really anyone can do and that are not always very difficult to do, but they can really have a lot of benefits. So I want to talk you through two examples, one from when I worked at a school and one from when I worked with the district. So the school was a community school, which for Ohioans would be a community learning center, I believe, like a 21st century school with after school programs, and I was the resource coordinator. And so, yeah, so the challenge was when I started, the principal said to me, we need to improve our attendance. That's the main thing I want you to focus on. And he showed me a really horrible spreadsheet that would have been impossible to use to track anything with. And so our use of data kind of grew from there, and my business really grew out of this as well. So excitingly, our results after like the third school year, we saw higher attendance rates for over half of the students who had been chronically absent for 2 years. So over half of our chronically absent population had increased their attendance rates, and sometimes by over 4%, which was significant. Um, Oh, thank you for the wow. I appreciate that. So how did we do it? We were very rigorous around tracking data. Now, I will be honest, I was the one spearheading this data movement, but by building this culture on our team of using data, we were really able to make a lot of difference. So we tracked data daily. We tracked interactions with families daily. We had a shared spreadsheet database that we all could enter into, we all could see. We talked about it at meetings. And this was not natural for most of my team members. I should be very clear. This was very different and new for them. And some of them, it took time. Our secretary, who I loved, it took her probably into the third year before she actually downloaded Dropbox to view said spreadsheet on her own and input information. But, she warmed to it over time. We had regular meetings with our attendance team. We would go through our heavy hitters and who really needed some intervention, talk about who knew, oh yeah, so-and-so is having surgery, or so and so's mother, or not mother, I guess, hopefully, someone passed away, like things that would cause large attendance gaps. We would talk about it. So like I mentioned with the secretary at our school, I just trained people who needed it. But eventually it kind of became the culture among our attendance team, and even with our teachers. We share data not only with teachers and administrators, but also with families. So if we had meetings about, really challenging attendance issues, I would pull up, a graph of their child's attendance, or sometimes even show them, here's the school average, and like here's where your child is. And it was never from uh a critical point of view. It was always from, we're really concerned and we want to help. So on the flip side, this is a district example from when I worked in the Office of Engagement at Baltimore City Schools. So I know it's different in a lot of different places, but in Baltimore at the time, which was a few years ago when I started, the Title I Parent and Family Engagement funds were, every Title I school was given its own allocation and was responsible for spending its own funds, which may seem great if you don't have that flexibility, but because there are some restrictions on the funds, it was going unspent in huge quantities because people didn't know what to do, and it was a small enough allocation that they just gave up. So through building a culture of data in our office that managed these funds, in FY16, the average percent spent was around, or actually not average, but total percent spent was around 53%. So a ton of money was either getting repurposed or going back to the state, which is unacceptable. And in 1 year, we got it to almost 80%. So yeah, how we did it, it was very similar in a lot of ways to the school-based example, because I was working with a lot of colleagues who maybe didn't understand data, were intimidated by data. And so we did trainings. I put together some processes. At this point, I was the evaluator. And so I was able to put in place a data dashboard, which, I taught myself how to do it. It is actually not as complicated as it seems. We developed goals. Honestly, I took a piece of chart paper and drew a thermometer and would color it in red when we had reached some other goals. It does not have to be high tech, but we kept everyone on the same page, in the loop, updated regularly, and showed them that checking their data was a positive thing. Because I think previously they had been getting the, oh God, this is criticizing my work. This is showing that I'm not doing a good enough job. And we just kind of moved past that a little bit. So we were able to be positive about using data and celebrate our growth. And then in terms of the compliance piece, we showed our schools and our staff members, well, for staff members and schools, I guess, we worked on connecting spending requirements. So this isn't just compliance. This isn't just, you have to spend this money, this is a really annoying requirement, into, hey, you already have a family engagement plan. You already have an attendance engagement plan. You already have all these things in place. This is just the means to do it. So let's figure out a way to support the work you're already doing with this seemingly very annoying requirement and, merge all these things together into something meaningful. I think I probably covered those, so thank you. So I just wanted to talk through, I have a couple minutes left. I just wanted to talk through some tips for creating this culture of data within your organization. You know, be a leader. If you're someone who appreciates data or want to learn about data, model that behavior. I mean, it's just like we do with our students. Sometimes people just need to see that it's possible and that it works and that people can do it easily and not be stressed about it. And also, numbers are really hard to argue with. So if you start using data in your own work, people don't always know what to say when you've like presented like a fairly foolproof argument, right, for what's happening. Yeah, so as part of the modeling, encourage others to think about the data that affects their own work. Uh, Use shared systems. Now, I'll be really honest. I used shared systems for everything. We had SharePoint, I think, at the time. And most people on my team did not use it. They would slowly get used to it. But I constantly reminded them, hey, yeah, our spreadsheet's on SharePoint. Hey, you can check it on the data dashboard. Hey, putting all these things in place so that at a certain point they have no choice but to start adopting those behaviors. And like I said, with my chart paper thermometer, you don't have to use anything high tech either. Maybe it's just a chart on your wall or a weekly handout with data in people's mailboxes. It can be really simple. So, like I said before, connect the dots between what feels like compliance and what you know in your heart is your real work, because often they can complement each other. Um, a lot of this is just changing habits. So I know that people mention that this takes time, but the more you can build in data into your regular meetings or host once a month data meetings, um, reflect on how you message to people and see how much more progress you can make by shifting your mindset and shifting your messaging to really support the real work and not in service of these compliance requirements. And then collaborate with other teams. If you're building out a data dashboard, share it with others or vice versa, so that there isn't a duplication of data collection and there isn't a duplication of efforts to try and understand data. And then people have different kinds of data. So the more we can collaborate across district offices or school teams, right? Like there's the instructional leadership team and the attendance team and the engagement team. The more we can collaborate and share data, the easier it is to continually talk about it and use it without as much confusion. So that's it for me. I really appreciate you listening. I'll definitely respond to the questions I saw in the chat. Shameless plug, I just relaunched my website, so definitely feel free to check that out. I'd love to have you visit and keep in touch. Thank you so much.